side, and we want you on the team. Explore iconic football towns: Chicago, Green Bay, New York, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and make memories with fellow Irish NFL fans on the trip of a lifetime. We've partnered with Bernard Hayes Travel, a trusted travel partner with over 30 years' experience. We'll look after everything: flights, accommodation, transfers, match tickets, social events, and everything in between. An unforgettable experience. Picture yourself in the stands at Soldier Field, Lambeau, or MetLife, roaring on your team. Register your interest today at irishnflshow.com/tours. Don't just watch the game, live it. Welcome to the Irish NFL Show's Week 17 live preview show. It's great to have you with us. If you're taking a break from your loved ones and from the festive mayhem, then thank you for spending that break with us. And if you happen to be on your own this Christmas for whatever reason, know that you are not alone. We're very glad to have you here with us as we talk football. Kieran O'Donovan and Shane Brennan with me, Conor Brophy, here to preview those Game 17 or Week 17 games. It's Saturday at time of recording. I had to double check before we came on because we're in that point of the festive season where time ceases to have all meaning. There is only cheese and leftovers at this point. I'm already looking forward to another cheese board tonight. Working on my night cheese. Anyway, let's start with two playoff teams going head-to-head as the Texans travel to SoFi to take on the Chargers for the half-9 game. Kieran, both of these teams over the last couple of weeks in particular looking like they're tightening up the playoff-type defense. Offense up and down for the Texans, relatively consistent, if not necessarily explosive for the Chargers. But this is an exciting week for these to be going head-to-head. And we have a couple of these type of matchups in Week 17 and indeed Week 18, where we're looking at teams that may meet down the line, but are also still in the hunt in terms of both divisional and for seeding reasons. So this promises to be an explosive encounter.
Yeah, this is the week where you really start scratching your head, isn't it? Before, when you look at the lineup, you say, okay, who's got something to play for here? Who's got something on the line? And you start to make your predictions, and then you start going through permutations of, okay, what happens if in this scenario during the game? As in, you know, it all gets very, 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 very confusing at this time of the year. But yeah, you're right. Like, I mean, these two teams certainly have a lot at stake, and they still have plenty to play for in this week's match. Justin Herbert is going to be looking to avenge him. I mean, he won't, he'll want to get over last season's, what was it, 4 picks he had last year in the playoffs against the Texans. And you know, we've talked all year long about the Chargers' problems on their offensive line, and you've got two double digits sack artists coming in here in Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. So a lot to worry about if you're a Chargers fan. But at the same time, the Chargers over the last 3-4 weeks, they've been managing to scrape these unlikely victories in these situations. I think Justin Herbert has been unbelievable. He finally found, the offense finally found their groove. When the receivers didn't seem to be able to get open in the last couple of weeks, in the previous couple of weeks, but they seemed to sort out that problem last week. But again, this pass rush that's coming from the Texans is just something to rattle the bones if you're Justin Herbert. So the thing that worries me about this, if you're a Chargers fan, is what happens in this game, in mid-game, if Justin Herbert is looking like there might be a fear for his safety. Does Jim Harbaugh say, okay, we're in the playoffs, let's not tempt fate too much, let's pull him out? So things could change dramatically depending on how aggressive and how angry this pass rush is. But with the Chargers, you're looking. They're going to look to establish the run. They're going to look to get Omarion Hampton on the ball early and often, because Ashton Jeanty had some change for had some joy going straight up the middle against this Texans defense. So that's the key for the Chargers, is keep Justin Herbert safe. Is the number one goal, I think. See what you can how you can build into this game. And as much as the Texans pass rush scares me, I'm going to bang the Chargers drum on this once more. And I'm flying the Chargers flag, and I think they're going to come away from this with an unlikely victory again, if they can, 'If they can mind Justin Herbert.
So I think I dropped out at a very inconvenient time there. Looks like the Wi-Fi has been having a little bit too much cheese as well here. It's getting a little bit sluggish at this point. Yeah, you made a point, Kieran, very well that I was going to touch on a little bit myself, which is that the Texans, albeit that they're streaking, they're on the longest winning streak now that's still alive in the NFL, I think, if I'm not mistaken, since the Broncos were knocked off by the Jags last week at 7 games strong and looking to add an 8th this weekend. SoFi is generally an easy place to come in terms of the fact that you're not going to be facing a particularly vociferous home crowd, but it's not an easy place to go and play the Chargers right now. They're playing complementary football, by which I mean they're not exactly the best team in the league, but they're not huge amount of weaknesses in this team. And the Texans were kind of shown up by the Raiders last week. I did not expect them to lay such an egg. Yeah, they came out with the victory, but to your point, Ashton Genty ran all over them, and that's not the kind of form you want to be showing coming in against the Chargers. The Texans give up very little in the passing game. We've waxed lyrical about their defense and what they're able to do on the back end. You mentioned the fearsome pass rushers they've got up front. It's not like the Chargers are lacking in that department themselves. Tuli Tuipulotu finishing the game last week with another sack to add to his account, and they've looked pretty capable at closing down opposition quarterbacks. So I'd say CJ Stroud will need to watch himself. I would say that the Chargers defense will have something in store for him. I'd say, to your point, that the Chargers are likely to get some change against the Texans' rush defense. However, that's probably the main thing that they're going to be looking to tighten up. And I always I'm wary of falling into that trap of expecting patterns to repeat themselves, because it is very much a week-to-week league, and teams pull apart what happened on the tape and they can make the adjustments. I do think, although the Texans are underdogs in this game, that the Chargers are not the team that's going to rob them of their winning streak. The Texans are, as we've seen over the last couple of weeks, I think we were talking about last week too, a team that tends to come good at this time of year. And while it's been an up and down year for them, I think that they will come out of this one victorious. Shane, what say you?
Yeah, it is an interesting one that the Chargers are also trying to get some form of revenge for the Texans knocking them out of the playoffs last year. I think the interesting thing when we talk about this one is the fact that we always talk about how great the Houston defense is. They're actually the second worst in the league when it comes to yards per carry for quarterback runs. And because that offensive line is going to not hold up long enough to keep Herbert in the pocket, once he gets outside the pocket, he actually becomes very dangerous against what is a weak point for the Houston defense. That said, I just think that the Houston offense actually might be the ones that will be able to outplay what the Chargers defense will be able to put up. This could be a close game, but I'm backing Houston to win.
Shane, are you wearing the Teddy Bruschi jersey, by the way?
I am indeed, and I had a few Teddy Bruschi's last night as well. So just to really keep the theme going.
Give us a twirl there for anyone watching us live or watching us back.
It's 90s style, I think.
Thing of beauty. I was gonna tweak you by saying that was the last time the Patriots were good, but sadly the last time the Patriots were good was about 2 weeks ago. So those jokes are no longer relevant. We've had to throw all of them out. Ravens at Packers, Shane, is an interesting one. As Kieran was saying, it's one of those ones where you're trying to figure out who has the greater motivation at this point. Packers now confirmed to be without Jordan Love for this game. Malik Willis will start. Ravens obviously are going to be without, or looks like they're going to be without Lamar for this one. The Ravens now can ill afford a loss because the Steelers will close out the AFC North if they do so, and the Steelers can go win their game, which we'll get to in a little bit, where they play the Browns. The Ravens win this one, they get a shot at the Steelers in the last game of the season in what would be a titanic battle in that division. If not, that's going to be a bit of a damp squib, and this is where Week 17 can rob Week 18's or pick Week 18's pockets very quickly if we're not careful. Without further ado, though, on the Ravens on this trip to Lambeau, can they overturn the odds, or will it be the Packers who come out with the win?
I love the phrase you use, overturn the odds, because I think turnovers is a big part of why I think the Ravens might come in with strong play, but will come in with being weak in key moments. We saw that against the Patriots last week, a game that the Patriots had no right to win, but the Ravens had another late fourth quarter collapse, as we've seen consistently happen over the last 3 or 4 years. That is why there's all this talk around Harbaugh and his future as well, because it's just become a big part of what we can expect now from the Baltimore Ravens experience. And going into Lambeau, regardless of the fact that Jordan Love isn't playing, let's not forget the fact that Malik Willis, despite the fact I think he is carrying a bit of a shoulder injury, which might dent our expectations to what he may be able to pull out tonight. But he was still 9 of 11, 121 yards and a touchdown last week against the Bears, 44 rush yards, and a quarterback rating of above 140. So That's still an efficient guy to try and play against, to try and plan defensively against. But then again, the Ravens, and as much as we talk about their defense, are they, how much do they bend but don't break? Well, they're really, really good actually in not giving up touchdowns in the red zone. The last 23 times an opponent was in the red zone, they only gave up 7 touchdowns. So both of these teams are going to really have to be clinical. I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of opportunities to actually score here, even if both teams trade periods of the game where they get chunks of yards. And that is where I think the Ravens fall back a bit. We've seen so many times where, a ridiculous play was thrown. There was a David Andrews one against the Patriots when he sort of, I was on the ground and he threw it across. Now the play ended up being caught dead, but there's a lot of these moments. We saw it against the Bengals a couple of times as well. But there's something about playing in prime time is the Ravens try to pull out these things which are just impossible to do, and then they end up giving the ball away at stupid moments. And of course, as I say, likely letting the ball drop a couple of times. DeAndre Hopkins is sometimes, when he gets out of coverage, is he really getting the most out of the plays he's getting? There's too many little things wrong with the Ravens when it comes to the moments when they have to be clinical. That makes it
we talked about Derrick Henry's bizarre and unfortunate habit of fumbling in key moments in key games.
That's it as well. But then at the same time, even though he's the most efficient person that they use, that they have there, sometimes they don't actually put him on the field or give him enough of the ball. So they try to rely on a pass game, which isn't efficient and has too many drops. Derrick Henry, yes, is also building up that sort of habit. But even in moments when it's quite clearly he's the guy, give him the ball more, as was the case against the Bengals and against the Patriots the last 2 times they played in prime time. They just didn't give it to him. It went up with a completely different game plan that didn't work. So for all those reasons, I just don't trust the Ravens to go in an absolutely gotta have it game in Green Bay, in Lambeau. If this is in Baltimore, I might be viewing this a little bit differently. And look, the Packers aren't without motivation, but they also aren't without flaws, as I'm sure Kieran will touch on there. But I just don't trust the Ravens to be clinical enough to actually get the victory here. They could go like 10 points up in the first half and still find a way to bin this, and I expect that they will. I'm going with the Packers to win here.
Kieran, I think it was you who said in the chat, it's funny how the NFL sometimes makes strange bedfellows. Aaron Rodgers ends up sending the Bears to the playoffs, and the Vikings end up sending the Packers to the playoffs by beating the Lions. So the Packers are safe. It doesn't appear that they're going to massively change their seeding. They do still have a shot, though, at winning the NFC North, depending on how the Bears get on Sunday in what is a far from easy clash for them in Santa Clara. So Green Bay not lacking in motivation here, but being without Jordan Love and being without Micah Parsons also creates question marks and has created question marks given the manner of the defeat last time out. Where do they sit from your perspective?
Well, you mentioned the Vikings and the Lions giving them a hand. Now they can send Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers to the playoffs by beating the Ravens. So that'll be a full circle job. I have to agree with everything that Shane said about the Ravens. First off, it's as good and as talented as they've been, and I've been, waxing lyrical about them over the last 2 seasons, but they've consistently disappointed every time you thought, okay, now we're going to see the real Ravens. Now we're going to see the real Ravens, and it's just never clicked into gear. And at times, it just feels like they've gone against the grain and they've done what's not what you don't expect them to do, as opposed to playing the hot hand. Be that Derrick Henry when he's on a roll, or the receivers, or Lamar Jackson carrying the ball. We don't know what kind of a Lamar Jackson we're going to get. But to that end, I just find it really, really, and I've almost lost faith in trusting the Ravens, and that's why, just to cut a long story short, I am giving the edge to the Packers tonight. But the Packers, on the other hand, they're in a very precarious situation because they have to play as if they've still got a hope of winning of winning the North. I mean, they have to. They can't give up on that. Even though I think it's highly unlikely that the Bears drop 2 games. I think they might lose to the 49ers, but they're not.
The permutations are weird now, right? Because had the Lions had something to play for in the last game of the season, you would have said that's more of a 50-50 game. You now don't particularly see the Lions relishing a trip to Soldier Field when they're done and dusted. So the Packers have to expect the Bears to win that game. Whether or not that happens is a different story. And sometimes Week 18 has these quirky banana skin type results, and you just don't know. But to your point, whatever happens to the Bears tomorrow, they have to be looking at that one and saying, well, we got to expect the Bears to win there, so we got to win here and keep the thing alive.
And the thing is that the Lions, just a couple of seasons ago, they knocked the Packers out of the playoffs when they themselves had nothing to play for. So I mean, look, it does happen, and that's why I say it's almost frustrating to that end that the Packers have to play this out, because you wonder to yourself, okay, what's actually more important? Look, I think it's a good thing that Jordan Love isn't playing tonight, and I love what Malik Willis brings. But he's no Jordan Love. At the end of the day, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. I mean, like the Ravens have had a week to prepare for Malik Willis is a different situation to Malik Willis coming onto the field when the Bears had absolutely no prep done for him. And that Ravens defense sees a Malik Willis type quarterback every week in practice, so it's not as if they're not going to be ready for RPOs and misdirection and and any of that kind of stuff. But having said that, Malik Willis has been more than serviceable. I absolutely love what he brings to the Packers, but it's just a precarious situation for the Packers because you've seen Micah Parsons go down, you've seen Jordan Love go down, you've seen Christian Watson go down, and you're wondering to yourself, is it worth taking a chance on all these players not being healthy for the playoffs on the off chance that everything goes their way and they win the North? So it's a really funny game, to head into. And I think Matt LaFleur is going to be, I think he's going to be prioritizing player safety over going absolutely balls out to try and win this game. But having said that, it's the last home game in Lambeau. I don't trust the Ravens. I think they'll get that little bit of a boost from Willis as well and what he brings to the table. And I just see the Packers edging this, but it could go either way. I mean, the Ravens are desperate. This is last chance saloon. They absolutely have to have it. So wouldn't be surprised if I'm wrong on this one either.
Yeah, I agree with you. I know it's a got to have a game for the Ravens, but to Shane's point, the Ravens have let us down often enough. I really don't trust them here, and I do think that Malik Willis, to your point, is a more than serviceable guy to slot in for Jordan Love, and balled out last week against the Bears, albeit that they weren't prepared for him. I think Green Bay carries the day here. In the Sunday 6 o'clock window, we open with Jags traveling to Lucas Oil to play the Colts, and what a difference a few weeks makes. When the Jags last played the Colts, of course, Daniel Jones was still lighting it up for Indianapolis. He goes down in that game. The Jags, who had been sort of sputtering, came out of the blocks flying, having won that one 36-19, and they really haven't looked back since. Were at the peak of their powers last week in Mile High when they downed the previously high-flying Broncos, one of the first team to go in there and deal them a blow, and how they did it. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has looked finally the number one pick, the generational talent, all of the hype that was heaped upon him when he came out of Clemson. Over the last couple of weeks, it's a ridiculously small sample size, obviously, and people tend to come back to earth. And I don't imagine that the Jags play at the same level this week as they did last week, because that just doesn't happen. They'll probably regress more toward the mean. Having said that, the Jags mean has been far from mean this season. It's been mean on the defensive end, though, and this is probably one of the things that people have slept on over the past couple of weeks, while you focus on the gaudy Trevor Lawrence touchdown passing stats and the fact that he's also run in a couple of over the past couple of weeks. Travis Etienne has lit it up, and their defense has played particularly well too in that span. Colts, on the other hand, haven't had it so great. Philip Rivers and the offense have done as much as they could be expected to do, but they're up against it when they're only able to do what they were able to do defensively against the 49ers last week. I mean, if I'm being fair and saying that the Jags will regress to the mean, you would hope that the Colts defense regresses to the mean and don't have as poor an outing this time around as they did last week. But even if they meet at the more sustainable level of their performances, I still think the Jags offense has more than enough to cause the Colts defense nightmares. I think that's where the game is going to be won and lost. I think Philip Rivers, JT and et al. Will do their best on the other side of the ball, but it's just not going to be enough. There's a reason why the Jags are carrying 6.5 points of favoritism on the road, and I expect them to justify that. Kieran.
Yeah, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And yeah, it's the Jags defense cannot be slept on, but also the just the emergence of these wide receivers. It seems to be clicking. I know we're giving a lot of love to Trevor Lawrence, and rightly so, but it's BTJ seems to be back in form. Parker Washington is, his production level has increased massively, both on, in the receiving game, and he's a threat on special teams as well. And they're just on the crest of a wave. I mean, you're looking forward to potentially a home playoff game, and Kieran would only love that. I know you spoke about it on the show the other night. So no, it is. I think they continue to roll, and it's funny. I remember, to my detriment, saying on the show just a few weeks ago, I think the Colts have enough wins in the bag that they're going to see themselves out and get at least to the playoffs. But I think it's I think they're going to fall short. No, having said that, I think the Jags have only won, was it 2 of their last 11 trips to Indianapolis? So they've got home form, I suppose, in their favor, but that'll only get you so far. You mentioned their defense last week against the 49ers. I mean, the 49ers, they could not stop a nosebleed last week, and it was just Brock Purdy was able to march up and down the field, and Christian McCaffrey and co. And it was just, it was so
we've been
frustrating
talking
to
about
watch
Christian
him.
McCaffrey's overall contribution, but how he struggled to break 4 yards per carry in a lot of games this season. And that's not all on him. Obviously, it's the 49ers offensive line. He runs for 5.6 a carry last week. Like, to your point, they just could not stop anything. They're getting gashed in the run game, and they're getting lit up by Brock Purdy.
Yeah, and on the other side as well, it's like Philip Rivers has not been the problem since he came in. I mean, they have not missed a beat on, in the passing game since Philip Rivers came in, and just listening to him diagnose defenses over the last couple of weeks has been just top quality and entertainment.
I didn't realize how much I missed you. Oh, dadgummit.
Yeah, absolutely. But like, it's important to remember when we talk about, losing Daniel Jones and losing the quarterback, I think this regression is more down to the fact that Jonathan Taylor's production has plummeted, absolutely plummeted. I mean, he was unstoppable for the first 10 weeks of the season, and he's struggling to come close to 100 yards a game now, and I think that's, you can put it down to that, because Tyler Warren's still on the field, Pittman is doing his bit, Pierce is doing his bit. The passing game is okay, but it was never about the passing game. It was about Jonathan Taylor from the start of the year, and not to put it all on his shoulders, but it's that regression. I think that maybe, I don't know, has he been found out? Is it that he's become easy to scheme for? I don't know. I'm not in the know enough to kind of diagnose that, but I think that's where the problem lies, is that absolute dramatic downturn in the pass game. And as I said, I think the Jags keep rolling, and would that be the last nail in the coffin for the Colts that'll put them out of contention if they lose this week? Am I right in saying that?
That is something I should have checked.
I think
you are right.
I think it is. Yeah. I think they'll knock them out. I think that'll be the end of it for the Colts. Unfortunately, after such a promising start,
they would drop to 8-8 with that loss, then, wouldn't they? And
the other two have 9 or 10.
Yeah, they're done. I think you're right.
Yeah. No, I think that's the way it goes this weekend.
Let's, with our unearned male confidence, assume ourselves to be correct without having checked it. Shane.
I have it here. The Chargers have to beat the Texans on Saturday, and then the Colts have to win this game and then beat the Texans on the final week for the Colts to get in. So if the Colts lose this, or even if it could even be done, if the Texans win tonight, then the Colts are coming into this game already cooked. So that's the difference there. I'm backing the Jags to win this game. It's just funny we're just talking about the Colts. I mean, the big difference in the Jags and the Colts is the fact that the Jags have gotten better, because I find it more difficult to read what their offense and defense are doing mid-game, whereas the Colts have gone the exact opposite trend. From the time they were in Germany onwards, I feel like every time I watch them on offense or on defense, whether it's Jonathan Taylor, whether it's what the secondary coverage is doing, I just feel like I'm able to sit back and read. I know exactly what they're doing here, and they make themselves a much easier opponent to play against. So the Jags aren't going to drop this one, I don't think. I'm back in Jacksonville.
Right, Cardinals Bengals we're going to do as a quick pick, because life is just too short. I just realized I checked my picks in the spreadsheet that we have in front of us. I don't know what I was smoking when I picked that one, because I had picked the Cardinals, but I'm going to switch to the Bengals. What was I doing there out in the Arizona desert with the peyote? Shane?
The cheese dreams, is it? Some sort of Christmas, Yuletide thing. Maybe I can see a vision where the Cardinals can win a game.
I must have hit the Stilton hard that night.
You could tell I don't eat cheese, because I had the Bengals from the start, so I'm picking the Bengals here.
Kieran?
Yeah, happy Joe Burrow is back. Sad Joe Burrow has gone away for a while, so Bengals.
He got his teammates, he's got his offensive line fossils for Christmas. See that? If anyone watched the Netflix series Quarterback, Joe Burrow has a big thing for fossils, because they're millions of years old. Wow, Joe, I never thought about it that way. So he got his O-line fossils. He got them samurai swords the last time around. Patrick Mahomes got his guys Rolexes and designer luggage. So I mean, they all seemed quite happy, but I would have taken the Rolex over the Bear Cave skull. If it was me personally, maybe I'm just a little bit more shallow than the people who protect Joe Burrow or don't protect Joe Burrow for a living, as the case may be. Maybe if he'd taken fewer sacks and not gotten injured, they might have got themselves a Rolex. So he's sending them a little message in his own way there. We take a quick break.
You know great odds, you're in control, you always bet responsibly, and you're not afraid to choose alternatives. That's why you bet with QuinnBet. Build your own unique football bets with Create a Bet. Winning team, first goal scorer, number of goals, the possibilities are endless. And with a 4-star Trustpilot customer service rating, why not give QuinnBet a shot? QuinnBet, we bet you love it.
Well, we were talking about Joe Burrow's love of fossils. The Steelers certainly love their living fossil, Aaron Rodgers, who has taken them to the playoffs. I say that, he's like 6 years younger than me, but anyway, I'm not still playing football. The Steelers travel to Cleveland to play the Browns, and the schedule makers would have hoped that the AFC North would have still been a little bit tighter coming down the stretch, because you have Steelers-Browns this weekend, you then have Steelers-Ravens next weekend. That could still end up being a dead rubber, depending on how the Ravens get on in Lambeau the previous evening, and when the Steelers get to play the Browns in Cleveland, that might be done and dusted. They're already likely to have qualified for the playoffs, as other results may well have put them there. Steelers over the past couple of weeks obviously have put behind them the Mike Tomlin, the fire Tomlin chants and the booing of Renegade that we saw a couple of weeks ago. We talked about what a difference just a couple of weeks make. They've been rolling. They've had 3 games on the spin. I thought their victory against the Lions didn't age as well as I thought it might, since the Vikings then downed the Lions the following week and slightly devalued the Steelers' own victory. They'll be without DK Metcalf for this game, obviously, and for the next game after he was suspended for his altercation with a Lions fan on the sidelines. That one hasn't yet run its course. That Lions fan is certainly milking his 15 minutes of fame for everything that they're worth, and it's going to cause a little bit more trouble for DK. Boy, if the Steelers had that one over again, would they really have traded for DK Metcalf and let George Pickens go out the door? They, might have thought that they'd saved themselves a problem. Instead, they created a monster in Dallas and gained themselves a monster of their own in DK Metcalf, who has shown up at times, and we saw him to brilliant effect in Dublin, but has also shown up in too many of the negative ways this season. The Browns defense continues to ball out week in, week out, and I think they'll obviously be fighting for their boy Myles Garrett this week, who's still searching for that record sack. Who would bet against him getting it against Aaron Rodgers while he's at it? It's the Browns offense that, well, they held in there last week and they only went down narrowly, but if they can get anything going, this has the feeling of what could be a trap game for the Steelers. I mean, wouldn't Cleveland love to bloody their nose as they head towards the playoffs? It's probably the last thing that the Browns can do that will give them a real lift. Get Myles Garrett to sack record, stop the Steelers winning the division this week, leave the Steelers having to face the Ravens next week with everything still on the line. I think from a neutral's perspective, no offense to Steelers fans, that's kind of what we'd like to see happen. I don't, however, think that it will happen, because that Browns offense has just struggled so mightily to move the ball. Shedeur Sanders has shown flashes of the player that he and his dad certainly believe he can be. I'm not so sure if he's still the guy that you want to rely on at this point, but he's got a shot to nothing this weekend. Might be a little bit closer than the Steelers' 4.5 points that the bookies are giving them suggests, but I still do think they will come out the right side of it. Shane?
It was interesting watching the Browns-Bills game last week, and I was like, the Bills came out hot at the start, put up a lot of points, and then what happened was Josh Allen's foot got injured, and it meant that the Bills' offense couldn't actually do a whole lot more, and the Browns sort of slowly kept coming back in. But I was struck in that first half. I was like, hang on, where's this Browns defense that everyone keeps talking about? They were supposed to really stand up strong at home against an AFC rival coming in, and like the bad start there will really sort of usurp their chances to win against the Bills, because Shedeur and co managed to have a pretty decent second half. So I think that's an area which you're going to have to stand up on. And look, if there's any type of game that the Browns are going to win, it's going to be at home against the team which their fans despise the most, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's the kind of game which you can really cheer yourself up for. Now look, the Steelers come to this in the back of a 3-game win streak. The CD defense got a lot of sacks and Dylan Gabriel, and these teams faced off in week 6. Now, and not much has changed on the offensive line there. Shedeur might be a bit more nimble to get away from those sacks in comparison to Dylan Gabriel, I think. But just look at how efficient the Steelers' offense has been. We were talking about earlier about how inefficient the Ravens have been in a lot of key moments. Is the Steelers have just been really, really ruthless in making the most of every chance they have. Kenneth Gainwell has been a real revelation. We saw him in Dublin, and then he went quiet for a few weeks. He's had 5+ receptions in 5 of the last 6 games. He's been really strong in the run game himself, and Himself and Jalen Warren have become a lot more explosive in the types of runs they've been able to get going, and also in key moments like we saw against Detroit last week. And Aaron Rodgers as well. I mean, yeah, I know you made the the fossil remark earlier on, but I mean, if he's actually thrown 5 touchdowns for no interceptions in the last 3 games, that's a pretty tidy piece before you put it on the museum shelf, and that's the reason why he's been able to put up over 27 points in 4 of the last 4 games. So yeah, I think the Steelers have it all there. That they know, they will know the meaning of this. Now, look, by the time this game actually comes around, the Ravens might already be knocked out of the race for the AFC North, in which case the Steelers might decide to start resting some players really early rather than wait until next week to rest them, because they just don't need it. Like their only real chance of improving their seeding is for some way that they manage to get the 3rd seed rather than the 4th seed by virtue of whoever wins the AFC South dropping a couple of games at the end. And I'm just not quite sure how much we can really expect that to happen, or whether the Steelers are going to hedge their bets for that. They'd rather protect Aaron Rodgers and a couple of the players. I mean, TJ Watt is coming to this on the back of an injury. He's questionable. I can't imagine they will play him at all in the next 2 games if they come into this 50-50. So that really depends on what happens in that Ravens game as to how strong they will push themselves to be. But I just see the Steelers as being as really getting motoring on that offensive side of things. Even their defense might still struggle, and who knows what Shedeur and Co might be able to get going. But I just I like what Gainwell and the Steelers offense and Rodgers in particular when it comes to just being able to manage games, and his pure accuracy. I really question his athleticism coming into the season, or whether he would have the stamina to last. But his accuracy hasn't gone. It really hasn't, and that accuracy, especially in key pressure moments when he has the mentality to fight through that, as he's proven for so long in this league, really counts for a lot. Again, as we saw against Detroit. So I think I like the Steelers in this one. Maybe that 4.5 point spread is a bit much. I agree with you on that, Connor, but I like the Steelers to win this one.
If you're going to watch this one, and indeed if you fancy watching Red Zone anywhere other than the comfort of your own home, when you're at that point where you want to venture out, can we of course recommend the Arlington in Dublin? It's one of the best places you could possibly choose to do so. It might be nice to eat something other than turkey and ham as well. I can highly recommend the Arlington Food Offer too. Shout out to them and Kieran and the team who've been so good to us this season, and we hope they've enjoyed a very good festive break themselves and are right back into it now. Kieran, how do you see Steelers Browns before we get to Saints Titans?
Well, if the Ravens game plays out the way we've said, and as Shane alluded to, the Steelers start resting players, including Aaron Rodgers, how much would Myles Garrett love to break the sack record against Mason Rudolph? Given their history, given their spicy background, I think it's 6 years since there was a helmet thrown, and yes. It was a costly moment. So I think Myles Garrett wouldn't mind for that to play out that way. But I see the Steelers coming away with it. I think they're riding a bit of momentum at the moment, and I think they get through this one.
Well, we'll push down the throttle and quick pick Saints Titans. I'm going for Saints on the road in this one, Shane.
Firstly, I hope that Charlie Smith is playing this one. I think he was listed as questionable heading into this one, but either way, I'm going for the Saints to get a victory here.
Kieran?
Yeah, Saints, keep rolling.
Right, it's the Florida Bowl next as the Bucs travel from Tampa Bay to Miami to take on the Dolphins. Bucs 5.5 point favorites in this one, Kieran, even though they've lost 3 in a row, and have Todd Bowles looking increasingly angry both on the sideline and in his post-game press conferences.
Yeah, like there's not a huge amount to say on this game from my point of view, except that the Bucs just absolutely have to stop the rot. It's as simple as that. Like Miami have nothing to play for. Okay, they hung in there longer than we gave them credit for at the start of the season. Mike McDaniel hung in there a lot longer than I gave him credit for at the start of the season. And you know, they've been playing a little bit tougher over the last number of weeks, and they've been stout on defense. But this is all about the Bucs, and you know, the fact that just by virtue of the fact that they play in the South, they still have a chance to win the division. I mean, they've got one. Like I saw, I think it was on NFL.com, where I saw a good line: the healthier they got this season, the worse they've played.
So true.
We've talked about, Mike Evans is coming back, Chris Godwin is coming back, Emeka Egbuka is back, and every time we talk about players coming back, they've let down, and unfortunately, and you know, I talk about waxing lyrical. The first 9 weeks, Baker Mayfield was on an MVP run, and since then his production, again, we talk about plummeting. He's absolutely just in free fall at the moment in terms of what he's been able to accomplish. And just by virtue of the fact that they still have so much to play for, because Baker is he is a gutsy kind of he's a fighter, and you do find him capable of I do figure that he's capable of coming out of this slump.
And we should make the point, and I know we get to this game, but just for context, the Panthers play the Seahawks, so the Bucks have that in the back of their mind going into this one.
Yeah, and I think that we're going to get to the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks are just a formidable opponent for the Panthers. It's just a huge opportunity for them to swing momentum in their favor again. Rashad White and Bucky Irving are back healthy. I mean, there's no reason why the Bucks should lose this game. And so as bad and as unreliable as they've been, I'm going to almost quick pick this one and give it to the Bucks.
Yeah, I found myself doing that smug thing that you do when your team actually starts to look dangerously good again. And I was looking at the Dolphins going, man, it'd be amazing if the Dolphins decided to tear everything down to the studs. I could really see Jordan Brooks being a great addition to the Bears if it was possible to winkle him loose. But the point is that Jordan Brooks and maybe Jalen Waddle are one of only couple of Dolphins that you can count on that have actually had a really good season this season. I mean, it's been so poor, and if there is a get-right game on the schedule right now, it is Miami, as the Bengals showed last week when they just absolutely put them to the sword. If it's not now, then it's never for Tampa Bay. The season all rides on this, and I don't think they could hope to have a better away game at this time of the season. It's not cold, it's in state, they don't have to go too far, and it's against a team that has absolutely checked out. And as you say, I don't know who's more surprised, the Dolphins or Mike McDaniel, that he's still in that job. He may not keep it in the off season, and I don't expect the Bucks to do anything to help him pad his resume in this one. It's Tampa Bay all the way from me. Shane,
is there a world where players on the Miami team play really good to try and maybe prove to the new general manager that a trade for Lamar Jackson might be something they should consider into the future? Could this be the game that they come forward and play really, really strong against a Tampa Bay Buccaneers team who are in free fall, against a Baker Mayfield who has thrown so many uncatchable passes? I think PFF said he has the highest uncatchable pass rate in the NFL since week 7. No, the Bucs are going to win this game.
Shane, I hate to do this to you, but it's a quick pick for your Patriots against the Jets. We just don't have time to burn on this one, as the Patriots are already home and host, and the Jets, less said about them, the better. It's Patriots in this one. They're 12.5-point favorites, incidentally, by the way, so nobody seems to have a huge amount of hope that this one is going to be competitive. Shane?
Yeah, Patriots can claim the first AFC East title in 7 seasons by winning this one, and I surely expect them to do so.
Kieran?
Yeah, no shocks here. Patriots.
All right, quick break.
This is Ireland. Rugged, wild, and endlessly captivating. A land shaped by history, where ancient castles whisper stories of the past. Where world-class links golf connects you to breathtaking landscapes. And where centuries of craftsmanship and culture are blended to produce world-class whiskies, savoured as music and laughter fill the air. But every journey with us is about people, place, and authentic experiences you'll never forget. This is more than a trip. It's the Dunes and Drams experience. Discover Ireland with us and make memories that will last a lifetime.
Well, we just finished talking about Bucks, Dolphins, and saying that it's the last chance saloon for the Bucks. But one of the things that will give them hope is that the Panthers welcome the Seahawks, the best road team in the NFL and one of the best teams in the league, full stop, on current form. Shane, the Seahawks are 7.5-point favorites on the road. It's rare to see a team carrying more than a one-score lead, especially going up against a division leader with playoff aspirations of its own.
Yeah, I think that's probably just a testament to the fact that the Seahawks have been just able to play some really, really good football. Even though if you look at like almost every statistical breakdown possible of that Thursday night game that they won against LA, you're like, how did LA lose this game? And we'll talk about the Rams later on in a second in terms of the nature of that. I mean, you have to remember, like, Jackson Smith-Njigba in that match was completely shut out in the first half. The Seahawks are on a 5-game win streak, fair enough, and they're become really aggressive and efficient in the red zone. But Darnold, when it comes to these big games, consistently throws a lot of interceptions. He threw 2 against the Rams. There was the 5 turnovers against the Rams previously. And this game isn't in really, really big game territory, as their matchup against the 49ers will be next week, but it isn't really miles away. I think, there will still be a lot of pressure on Darnold and co to play mistake-free football, and that's what I need to do coming up against Carolina. And let's not sleep on this Carolina defense. They've had 5 of their last of 7 opponents under 21 points. Their secondary is holding quarterback to a sub-90 rate. What I was talking about earlier about the ability to read and what the defense is able to do, these are 2 teams who have been among the best in the last few weeks in terms of you're watching it and the defense is disguising what it is it's actually trying to do. It's been the strength for Carolina, which has set up their, albeit streaky offense to maybe pull out a win against Buccaneers and then maybe drop a dud as to have a couple of times. But for the Seahawks, the thing is, the offense that defense is propping up is a lot more confident in itself. It has a greater idea as to what its identity is, even if more than 50% of their offensive output a lot of these games is that connection between Darnold and Jackson Smith and Jigba, which does make it a little bit one-dimensional and easy for a good defensive team to plan against. But as much as the Panthers will have a greater need, they won't know what the result is in Tampa. The next week is their Super Bowl, I think, regardless of whatever way this season goes or this week goes. And I just think the Seahawks, who we know have been so good on the road this year, have had 3 days extra to rest and will still come in with a huge amount of confidence and momentum and belief that this could be their year after what happened on Thursday Night Football last week against the Rams. That I just don't think they're going to let a Panthers team with a streaky quarterback get the better of them, because their defense is too good, I think, for Bryce Young to have one of his better games here. I think his good performance, and I'd even suggest and be suspicious that even inside the coaching staff, the people who are putting together tape and all that, I think they may be sidelining 20% of their time, more of their time than normal, into planning ahead for that Buccaneers game, which may almost sacrificing planning for the Seahawks, because they may just be expecting the Seahawks test to be too much for them. And for that reason, I think Seattle is going to get a good win here.
Kieran, if you're talking about bulletin board material, the fact that a team comes into your building as 7.5-point favourites when you've won nearly every single game, I think the Panthers have only dropped one at home, they'll be insulted by that, regardless of how they may be looking ahead to that Bucs game.
Yeah, and the Panthers have they've so many reasons to be hopeful here. Like the Seahawks come into Carolina with one of the top pressure ratings in the league in terms of their defense and the pressure they can put on the quarterback. But Bryce Young has been one of the best and most productive passers under pressure this season, and so he hasn't shirked away from responsibility. They've got such a far greater record, or far better record at home than away this season, so they seem to be comfortable at home, albeit the Seahawks have one of the better traveling away records in the league. They also have these signature wins. They've beaten the Rams, they've beaten the Packers, so they're not afraid of the quote unquote big boys in the league. So they have an awful lot going for them. But at the end of the day, I just think the Seahawks are top to bottom. They're just the better team. They're just the better all around team. And Ben will be delighted to hear me say that the Seahawks are creeping into so many people's Super Bowl conversation now. And now that the fact that Sam Darnold has this signature win under his belt against the Rams, having thrown 2 picks and having faced adversity within the game, and we often mention and we give great credit to quarterbacks like Justin Herbert for being able to win games when he's not jumping off the stat sheet. Well, that's what Sam Darnold did last week. He came away with a signature win when we questioned whether he could do that in the biggest of games under pressure. And Seahawks fans, I'm sure, would be massively buoyed by that win last week. I don't see any other outcome than the Seahawks going into town and taking care of business against the Panthers. But, which will set up, the ultimate showdown in the South next week as well. So that'll be one that might well end up being one of the few games with major permutations next week. So we look forward to that regardless. But I think that the Seahawks put the pressure on, keep the foot on the gas and keep themselves well in contention for the number 1 seed.
Well, if you happen to be watching Red Zone on Sunday, and hopefully you're in the cozy confines of the Arlington Hotel and Bar when you're doing so, there will be a 20-minute window where the Giants Raiders will be the only game in town. So that might be as good a time as any to take your bathroom break, make that cup of tea, order something from the bar, any of the above, because the only thing that these two will be disputing between them is who will end up with the number 1 overall pick in the draft, unless somebody comes up on the rails and manages to outlose them over the next 2 weeks. For that reason, we will be quick picking. I'm going to take the Raiders in this one. Shane?
I thought we were doing a separate podcast in this game. This is not the most consequential game of the weekend. It would be the most New York Giants thing ever to lose this game and then win next week at home against the Cowboys, and then completely make a mess of their season in front of their home fans in terms of the number one pick. So I go for the Raiders to win this one.
Kieran.
I think Craig, Kieran, and Brian are going to do a separate pod on that to preview this game. But no, Brock Bowers is out for the season. A very disgruntled, apparently, Max Crosby has been shut down for the season as well. So I think the Giants just don't lose this one.
Yeah, Pete Carroll had to address that in his press conference. He did it in an interesting way. If you check that clip out, I'm not sure how convincing it was, but he did his best to try and put that one to bed. Reader, that is not put to bed. At 9:25 on Sunday, the Eagles travel to Buffalo for one of the better games of what is already a pretty good slate this weekend. The Eagles have been on a roll of late. They have put behind them some of the form that led to them getting the Bluebirds at home at Lincoln Financial Field. They go to Buffalo, though, to face the Bills, who have turned their season around themselves and are 2.5-point favourites at home. The Eagles over the past couple of weeks have looked much more like the 2024 Eagles, albeit against relatively modest opposition. Saquon suddenly looking like 2024 Saquon all over again. 120 plus yards 2 of the last 3 games, and he's breaking off some of those explosive runs. AJ Brown has gone for 95 plus yards in 4 of his last 5 games, and it's starting to look like the AJ Brown of old again. Jalen Hurts picking up gains with his legs, being relatively conservative in the passing game, but finding the big guy downfield. And if it's not AJ Brown, it's Devontae Smith. I think there's going to be a hell of a battle. I can see the Bills leaning more heavily on that run game again, as they did to great effect last week. The Eagles, as we saw against the Bears 3-4 weeks ago, can be got at in the run game. That defensive front is not as invincible as it looked last year. We've also seen on the other side of the trenches what the lack of Landon Johnson did to the Eagles. We know they can be got at, and the Bills are as good a team as any at taking advantage of those deficiencies. Not that there are many deficiencies in the Eagles team. This is a fascinating game for me. Both teams rounding into near playoff form at just about the right time. I think as the home team, that's the only thing that really separates it for me. The Bills should just about have enough to squeak this one out, but it's going to be, I imagine, quite a low-scoring affair. Both teams are going to be cagey enough. They're going to try and pound it up the middle. And both James Cook and Saquon Barkley look in sensational form. The running game is a good thing to be able to lean on at this time of the year, particularly in the confines of a frigid Orchard Park. But I think the Bills will just about squeak this one out. I think it's Buffalo in this one for me. Shane, how do you see it?
Before the season started, we all sort of did our things to who we would think would make the Super Bowl. And I picked Eagles-Bills as my preseason pick. And I'm not saying I'm sticking with that considering the way other teams are playing, but both of these teams, I think, are starting to really peak at the right time. I mean, the Eagles, look, let's be fair about this. The last 2 games they played against were against the Commanders and the Raiders. So, yeah, but if in terms of taking the opportunity they had to try and reset, and as well as that, unlock the one biggest problem that they have with their offense in comparison to the 2024 Eagles, as you were saying there, Connor, is trying to get more out of Saquon Barkley. He's been a lot more efficient in the last 3 games. He's been getting much more explosive runs, his confidence in the offensive line, and be able to find him gaps. And I think that's going to be a huge thing coming into Buffalo, who themselves have had one of the best run games in the league this year, and I think have been consistently improving. I mean, we think of the temerity they had to be able to come back against the Patriots, the run game with James Cook. He's leading the NFL in rushing at over 1,500 yards for the season, which is, which we haven't. It's kind of slid under the radar a little bit because we're talking about Jonathan Taylor so much at the start of the year. That's just become a really big thing. And as well as that, Josh Allen's has managed to put up 12 rushing touchdowns as well, which really helps their cause. It's almost like seeing what we thought the Ravens would be with their quarterback running back combination, but the Bills are being able to execute that much better. It's very, very difficult, I think, to pick who will be victorious here. But if I'm sitting back, and I understand what you're saying about the home field advantage and everything the Bills have going for them, but I just think now, because the Eagles, we've seen this so many times before in terms of the mentality roller coaster that it comes with being a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. They seem to reach a point in October, early November, as it did this year around Thanksgiving. No, it was before Thanksgiving, when they lost to the Cowboys, where the questions and the pressure is so much. But diamonds is formed under pressure. They come out of the other side of it, fix what are the main problems that they have, grind out wins, find ways to to turn close situations in their favor as opposed to letting things build. Jalen Hurts becomes more efficient in the pass game. AJ Brown does less talking in the press conferences and more talking on the field because he's getting more ball. The offensive coordinator isn't getting his house, eggs thrown in his house because he's just doing a better job of being able to actually get more out of that squad. And I think this game is almost perfectly set up for them to try and shut down any doubters, to go into Buffalo, a tough place to go, especially this time of the year, and to prove to themselves, more importantly, but also to the world, that look, despite the dip we had here, we're now fully in Super Bowl form here. We're still the ones, the reigning champions. We've got the title belt. Someone's going to have to come and take this off us. And for that reason, I think the Eagles are going to grind out a close win here.
Kieran.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. I think there's just something different about the Eagles this year. I don't see them kind of having that resurgence in the playoffs. I think they're going to stutter to the playoffs and then maybe whimper out in round 1 or round 2. And I could completely be eating my words in a few weeks' time. I do appreciate that. But I think the Bills, that given their home record in December and January, has just been immense under Josh Allen, or with Josh Allen under center. I think the Bills come away with this.
Well, that is a game with consequences. Sunday Night Football sees the Bears travel to Santa Clara to take on the 49ers in Levi Stadium, Kieran. That is a game with consequences. The 49ers can win their 2 remaining games, win the division, and clinch the NFC's number 1 seed. The Bears still have a shot at the NFC number 1 seed, depending on which way results go in their direction. They also are in the catbird seat as far as winning the NFC North is concerned. That can change for one or other, will change for one or other of these teams this weekend, and they will face very different Week 18s depending on the outcome of this one. The 49ers 2.5-point favourites at home.
Yeah, 2 of the most unlikely success stories, I think, of the year. The Bears, just because there was so much unknown, and while everybody, I suppose, had an inkling of how good Ben Johnson could be as a head coach, nobody expected the resurgence to happen so quickly. It almost felt like a rebuild year, and you were kind of saying a winning season and maybe a run at the playoffs would be a success. But he's turned that around so fast, so quickly. And the last few weeks, unfortunately, I've got to see the Bears up close and personal as a Packers fan, and even in the win that the Packers had at Lambeau, I was highly impressed by the Bears. I just think we've talked about their offensive line and the run game, Monongai and Swift, and what they've been able to do in the last few weeks. They're such a huge threat on both sides of the ball because they're just turnover machines as well. What are they? Have they 20 over? They've well over 20 turnovers, but the nearest team to them is barely over 10.
They've 30 in total, and the Jags are the next nearest on 19. It's crazy.
Oh, was it 19? Okay, so but I mean, it's just. That's huge. I mean, that's such a huge margin, and that's going to be the key to whether they can take down this 49ers team is whether they can be opportunistic, because the Niners have coughed up turnovers as well this year. I think they're 24th in turnover giveaways this season as well. But having said that, I talk about unlikely success stories, and it's just been the 49ers overcoming injury after injury after injury, and just the job that they've done in coaching through both coordinators and play calling has just been immense. I mean, what they've got from the squad that they've had is just, in fairness, we just cannot but give them credit for it. And coming into this playoff run now, you've got their best players and their best weapons performing at an absolute top level. It's Christian McCaffrey and it's George Kittle and Brock Purdy with 5 touchdown passes last week. This is such a pick'em game, and I said at the top of the show that I don't think the Bears are going to lose 2 games to finish out the season, but I think they might lose this one, and it'll give us something to be excited for again. It'll just give us something to we don't want everything to be dead and buried, but going into Week 18, and just by virtue of. I think that's the only reason I'm picking it. It's kind of more what I want to happen for the interest of Week 18 as opposed to what I think will happen. It's a coin flip game for me, but on the sheet on the pick sheet I've picked the 49ers, and I'm just going to stick with that.
Yeah, to your point, Kieran, the Bears have made an awful lot out of being the unknowns this year, and I think it's worked really well for them. I think they've caught a lot of teams by surprise, and I think they've improved over the course of the season. And what you saw in week 2 or 3 is certainly not what you're getting now. I mean, they got absolutely opened up by the Lions. They dropped their opening game to the Vikings. And to your point, if you looked at both the Niners and the Bears, at that stage of the season, the Bears at 0-2, the Niners with their entire medical facility full, with their star players all injured, you would have said neither of these teams would have a hope in hell of duking it out for the playoffs. Never mind potentially getting the number 1 seed in the NFC, but that's the way the season has panned out. I think both teams, it's, styles make fights, and both teams have ways to hurt each other here, which makes this a fascinating battle. I think the Bears are the kind of offense that the 49ers defense will tend to struggle with. However, I think the 49ers offense is the kind of offense that the Bears defense has struggled with. The one factor that might play in Chicago's favor, to your point again, is that opportunistic turnover mentality that they have. They've had an insanely high turnover differential this year for 2 reasons. One, because statistically they've had a break of the ball, and they've just gotten a lot of those ones that end up dropping to the floor in other seasons, or ones that get tipped and don't quite get caught in other seasons. All of them have fallen in the Bears' favor this year. At a certain point, that is going to turn around, but I've been saying that every week for the last 10 weeks, and it hasn't turned around just yet. The other thing that people kind of miss about the Bears is their turnover differential is so high because they do not give the ball away. They cough up very few turnovers. And, I know it's a lazy thing to say, and you can say it about pretty much any game, but I think this one really makes that very clear, that if the 49ers can turn Caleb Williams and that Bears offense over, if Brock Purdy manages not to throw up those very risky looking passes that a Bears secondary will absolutely be all over, that's the key to victory for the Niners here. The way they played last week is the way they're going to have to play again this week if they're going to win this one. I do think they will, though. I think, to your point, I don't see the Bears losing their last 2 games of the season. I don't see them going out like that. I do see them bouncing back if they do drop this one. But this, to me, is just a bridge a little bit too far for a Bears team that has ridden its luck. And, for all the good wins that they've had in recent weeks when the schedule has got tougher, for all the questions they have answered, there are still more to answer, because they were lucky in Aaron Rodgers being injured for the Steelers. They were lucky in the fact that Jordan Love had to exit the game for the Packers. They've had an awful lot of luck, even apart from that, in that game, to recover the onside kick, first of all, and for everything to click in the way it did. I don't think they're going to get that same slice of luck again this week, because that's just not the way the world works. And I think the 49ers have just a little bit too much for them in Santa Clara. Shane?
Game of the week. I'm really looking forward to watching this one on Sunday night. I'm backing the Bears to win, I think, for 2 reasons. One, Purdy, I think, has gotten a lot of joy from his unwavering aggression and throwing a lot of balls downfield. When you're against a team that gets a lot of interceptions, that's actually a bit of a weakness. But I think the main thing is the fact that if you look at the 49ers defense, and yes, you're right, I mean, they've been coached exceptionally well. They've been able to get so much good results out of it. They haven't faced a lot of really, really good run teams. And they're facing against, outside of what we were saying earlier, the Josh Allen, James Cook thing. DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monungai are the second best running tandem in the league right now. The last time that the 49ers played who I would consider to be a good run team, they let up over 40 points against the LA Rams. And that was a long time ago. Things have changed, etc. But I have too much belief in the Bears to see them drop this one. I don't think there's anything in the regular season that's the bridge too far for them just yet. The postseason is a different conversation. So for that reason, I'm going with Chicago.
Well, it is to those self-same Rams you just mentioned, Shane, that we go next for the last game of the week, the Monday Night Football game, where the Rams are traveling to Mercedes-Benz Stadium to play the Falcons in Atlanta. The Rams will feel rightly sore at having lost that game against Seattle, because if you looked at the box score and if you looked at the stats, you would have said LA wins that game all day long. That's not always the way football works, and that's one of the many reasons why we love it. They'll be very sore, and they will see the Falcons as the ideal prey. But will it work out that way?
I have a funny feeling it will. I mean, we talk about how much some of these teams who have been knocked out are really playing for things. Some of them have pride. Some of them have rivalries they want to settle and all this. I don't see the Falcons being in any of those conversations. As a coach who's probably trying to coach his position, but that doesn't mean that players are going to actually play for him. Against the Rams team, like you said, I mean, Matt Stafford has had a 100-plus rating in the last 3 games he's played and over 280 yards. 457 and 3 touchdowns against Seattle last week. Now, again, the fact he played overtime probably bumps up those yards. But, I mean, like the amount of points that the Rams keep putting up. Last week, Stafford did not take a single sack against the Seattle Seahawks, who were one of the best sack getters in the league. And they still managed to get Puka Nacua to move around for over 220 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's some really, really good form. It was a mixture of, a good, we talked about that Thursday night game. It was a mixture of everything that sort of went against the Rams. It was a bit of Thursday night weirdness. the 2-point conversion and the special teams return and everything else. That doesn't mean that the Rams are a bad team and they're not bottlers in them. It's just one of those crazy football games. But they've had plenty of time to stew on
Don't
that.
talk to me about bottle.
What there's 11
Flowers.
games. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of cultural references I need to develop in my own thing. If you would what was it? Lost train of thought. Sorry, I said I lost train of thought. The train of thought is quite simple.
You talk about not having pop culture reference. This is a man with a Spotify age of 67. You just need to wind back some of those pop culture references. Like if you can nail your Waylon Jennings tunes, you should be able to pick up a Tim Flowers reference from early doors of the Premier League.
Yeah, that's true. It was funny. I was driving down to Kilkenny yesterday. Listen to what was it? The Creedence Clearwater Revival. So I think I'm bumping that listening age up a little bit. Look, the story of this game is going to be very simple. The Rams have had 11 days just to stew on this and to try and have somebody to be the whipping boys that their offense is going to run all over. And there's nothing the Falcons offer that makes you think that this game is going to be any different. So yeah, give me the Rams to win.
Well, since Shane has teed me up so nicely, Kieran, will the Falcons see a bad moon rising when the Rams come to town?
Hey.
No, they're not going to be the fortunate ones this weekend. Am I having the right plan there? No.
Has it been cut?
Did we lose Kieran down on the corner there?
Oh my God! Unbelievable!
Just when he was in clear flow. Well, if we don't get a revival, oh, here he is back.
Am I back?
Like
Am I back?
You're back.
Okay. No, I think the Rams power through, and I'll keep it short and simple. I think the Devontae Adams injury, I think, was the difference between them winning and losing last week, and their production level just dropping that bit in the red zone. But that's not going to be an issue against the Falcons. They're too strong. They're too strong on offense and defense, and the Falcons, I think, are high on my list of biggest disappointments in this season with the talent that they've put on the field between Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts coming into form finally. They've still been a letdown this season, and no, I don't think the Rams dropped the ball on this one.
Yeah, I agree entirely. Not much more to be said on it than that, other than to say that we will be back with our instant reaction to the games on Sunday, and normal service will be resumed next week. Break and sorry, the broadband is lagging here, but we'll sign off and we will be back with instant reaction to the Sunday games. As I was saying, it's Rams for me, by the way. Sorry, I didn't actually pick that last game, just in case you were in any doubt. We'll be back with you very soon on the Irish NFL Show.
You know great odds. You're